Imagine you just woke up, floating in the vast emptiness of space. No body, no Earth, no solar system, just your consciousness, your thoughts, and your memories. Everything you remember, your childhood, your first love, what you had for breakfast this morning, might be nothing more than random arrangements of atoms creating false memories in a spontaneously formed brain. This is the Boltzmann Brain Paradox, and it's about to make you question everything you think you know about existence. In the late 1800s, physicist Ludwig Boltzmann was contemplating the nature of the universe and entropy, the tendency of all things to move from order to chaos. Think of it like your bedroom. It's much easier for your room to become messy than to spontaneously organize itself. The universe works the same way. But here's where things get strange. In an infinite universe with infinite time, anything that can happen, no matter how improbable, must happen eventually. Just as 1,000 monkeys typing for an infinite amount of time would eventually write Shakespeare, random atoms floating in space would eventually arrange themselves into meaningful patterns. Now, consider two scenarios. Scenario 1. Our entire universe, with its billions of galaxies, countless stars, and all of human civilization, emerged from the Big Bang and evolved over 13.8 billion years to create your current experience. Scenario 2. A single brain, with all the necessary neural connections to hold your current memories and consciousness, spontaneously formed from random atoms floating in space. Here's the unsettling part. According to the laws of probability, Scenario 2 is vastly more likely. It requires far fewer atoms to arrange themselves in the right way to create a single thinking brain than it does to create our entire observable universe. Think of it like this. Imagine you're playing with Lego bricks in zero gravity, which is more likely to happen if the bricks randomly collide, forming a small house or an entire city. The house, of course. Similarly, a single brain requiring fewer precise arrangements is more probable than an entire universe. But this leads us to an even deeper question. If Boltzmann brains are more likely than real universes, and if we assume we're experiencing reality right now, aren't we more likely to be Boltzmann brains than real people? Every memory you have, every person you've met, every experience you've lived through could be nothing more than the random firing of neurons in a cosmic accident. Some philosophers argue that this paradox reveals a fundamental flaw in our understanding of probability in the universe. Others suggest it might point to deeper truths about consciousness and reality. Perhaps we're all just thoughts in the mind of a greater consciousness. Or perhaps our understanding of cosmic probability needs serious revision. As you drift towards sleep, consider this. Whether you're a Boltzmann brain floating in space or a conscious being in a vast universe, your experiences, thoughts, and consciousness are real to you in this moment. The paradox doesn't just challenge our understanding of reality. It invites us to appreciate the extraordinary mystery of consciousness itself. In the end, perhaps the most comforting thought is this. If you are a Boltzmann brain that just popped into existence, you'll never be able to prove it one way or the other. So you might as well enjoy the reality you're experiencing, whether it's real or not. Philosophical zombie. Picture yourself at a bustling cafe. Across the room, someone is reading, sipping coffee, glancing out the window. They look engaged, maybe even contemplative, like they're deeply experiencing the world around them. But here's the twist. What if that person isn't actually conscious? What if they don't have any inner experience? No thoughts, no emotions, no awareness, but simply act as though they do. In other words, what if they're a philosophical zombie? This mind-bending thought experiment, known as the philosophical zombie theory, poses a profound question. Could a creature exist that appears perfectly human, behaves exactly like us, but lacks any conscious experience? Philosopher David Chalmers introduced the term philosophical zombie in his discussions on consciousness and the hard problem of understanding it. This theory is a fascinating way to explore what consciousness is, and more importantly, why it exists. To better understand this idea, let's dive into the basics. Philosophical zombies look and act just like humans. They'd laugh at jokes, recoil from pain, and make decisions in seemingly thoughtful ways. But unlike humans, they wouldn't feel anything. Their reactions are all mechanistic, like a highly advanced robot programmed to simulate emotions without actually experiencing them. If you say something surprising, they might gasp, but this gasp wouldn't be accompanied by the inner sensation of shock or surprise. They're empty, devoid of subjective experience. The concept of philosophical zombies is important because it confronts a mystery at the heart of consciousness studies. Why do we have conscious experience at all? When we see something beautiful, like a sunset, we don't just react to it physically. We experience a sense of awe. But why couldn't we just function without that awareness, responding like sophisticated machines? The question goes to the core of the hard problem of consciousness. What is the purpose of subjective experience? One way to approach this is through an analogy. Imagine you have two computers. One is programmed to perform calculations, and the other is programmed to calculate and produce a pleasant sound whenever it completes a task. The added sound doesn't change the function. It's just an extrasensory experience. Similarly, philosophers ask, could our conscious experience simply be a sound effect that isn't strictly necessary for survival or function? Let's apply this to a real-world scenario. Imagine a person, Alex, is walking in a forest and stumbles across a snake. Immediately, Alex's body reacts. Adrenaline surges, muscles tense, eyes focus on the threat. But here's the question. Does Alex's survival depend on actually experiencing fear? From a purely mechanical standpoint, all that's needed is a set of physical responses. A philosophical zombie could be programmed to step back, simulate fear, and run, without actually experiencing any fear. The response would be identical, but the inner sensation, the thing that makes fear truly fear, would be missing. For philosophers like Chalmers, this idea raises the question of what consciousness really adds to our existence. Why do we feel fear, rather than simply reacting to danger? Is consciousness just an evolutionary accident, or does it serve a deeper purpose? One of the biggest implications of the philosophical zombie theory is its challenge to physicalism, the view that everything about the mind can be explained by physical processes. If a creature can behave identically to a human without consciousness, this suggests that consciousness might be something extra that doesn't arise purely from physical interactions. It raises the possibility that consciousness is an independent phenomenon, something that can't be reduced to brain processes alone. This has led some to suggest that consciousness might belong to a realm beyond the physical, perhaps as a fundamental feature of the universe, akin to space or time. Others argue against the possibility of philosophical zombies, claiming that the act of behaving in a complex human way inherently requires consciousness. They contend that every reaction, every decision, and every interaction is so deeply intertwined with consciousness that separating them is impossible. In this view, philosophical zombies are a conceptual paradox, a thought experiment with no real grounding in how life or consciousness actually functions. What makes the philosophical zombie concept so compelling is how it taps into the mystery of our own awareness. We know we're conscious because we feel our thoughts, emotions, and experiences. But knowing what consciousness is remains elusive. The philosophical zombie theory highlights the unique, almost magical quality of consciousness. It's something that can't be observed or measured from the outside. You could study a human brain in exquisite detail, understand every chemical reaction and neural pathway, and still have no insight into what that person experiences internally. This idea invites us to ponder. If consciousness could be removed from our existence without altering our behavior, what does that say about the nature of reality? Are we simply collections of reactions with the illusion of self-awareness layered on top? Or is consciousness the very essence of our being? The philosophical zombie theory also taps into something deeply existential. If a person could be devoid of inner life yet still behave in every way like you or me, it raises questions about identity and authenticity. How do we know other people are conscious? How do we know we're not philosophical zombies ourselves? only thinking we're conscious because that's what we're programmed to believe. While these questions may sound fantastical, they speak to the heart of our deepest uncertainties about consciousness. Is there more to being alive than just existing and reacting? Or is that all we truly are? The philosophical zombie forces us to confront this ambiguity, making it a profound and perhaps unsettling reflection on the mystery of our inner lives. In the end, whether philosophical zombies are possible or not, this thought experiment serves as a mirror, reflecting the complexity and wonder of our own conscious experience. It asks us to marvel at the fact that in a universe filled with stars, atoms, and energy, there exists a phenomenon as strange and beautiful as the feeling of simply being, the butterfly dream. Paradox. Imagine a man lying under a tree drifting off to sleep as the breeze rustles the leaves around him. He dreams he's a butterfly, fluttering through the air, feeling the sunlight on his wings, experiencing the world in soft, vibrant colors. In this state, he is fully and completely a butterfly. He feels only the lightness of flying and the serenity of floating on the wind. Suddenly, he wakes up. Once again, a man. The experience fades, but a haunting question lingers. Was he a man dreaming he was a butterfly? Or is he now a butterfly dreaming he's a man? This ancient story, known as the butterfly dream paradox, is attributed to the Chinese philosopher Zhuangzi, who lived around the 4th century BCE. Zhuangzi's dream raises one of the most profound questions in philosophy. How can we know what is truly real? Are we certain of the reality we are in? Or could it all be an illusion, much like the way we perceive our dreams? Zhuangzi's butterfly dream touches on a universal human experience, the vividness of dreams. Most people have experienced dreams that felt so real, so complete, that they briefly believed them to be their true reality. In those moments, we rarely question the authenticity of the dream world. Our mind creates narratives, sensations, and emotions that feel entirely genuine. It's only when we wake up that we realize we were in a different state altogether. This paradox invites us to consider whether there's a fundamental difference between dreams and waking reality. In the dream, Zhuangzi was a butterfly. He experienced the world through its eyes, with its perspective and sensations. Upon waking, he found himself back as Zhuangzi, a man. But if his perception was entirely altered in the dream, how could he be sure which experience was the true one? This leads us to question the nature of our own reality. Is there any infallible way to confirm that we are not in fact dreaming right now? Zhuangzi's story also opens up questions about subjective reality, the idea that reality is not absolute, but perceived individually by each of us. What we see, hear, and feel is filtered through our minds, shaped by our beliefs, biases, and senses. In this sense, each person experiences a version of reality unique to themselves. Just as Zhuangzi, when he was a butterfly, had an entirely different experience of the world, we might each be living in slightly different versions of reality based on our own perceptions. An analogy often used to illustrate subjective reality is a film projector. Each person's mind can be thought of as a projector casting its own unique version of the movie of life onto a blank screen. The scene might be the same, but the interpretation, the colors, and the emotional resonance vary with each person watching. The butterfly dream. Paradox shares common ground with other philosophical questions about reality and existence. One famous example is Descartes' cogito, ergo sum, I think, therefore I am, which was Descartes' attempt to find a truth that could not be doubted. Descartes considered the possibility of being deceived by a powerful entity, but he concluded that his ability to doubt meant that he existed at least as a thinking entity. However, even with this assurance, Descartes couldn't be sure of the nature of the external world. This paradox also mirrors ideas in Hindu philosophy, where the concept of Maya describes the world as an illusion, a veil that obscures the true nature of reality. Just as in Zhuangzi's dream, where the line between butterfly and man is blurred, Maya suggests that the line between reality and illusion may be indistinct. Both concepts challenge the certainty of our knowledge and the reliability of our perceptions. In modern philosophy, Zhuangzi's butterfly dream resonates with the brain in a vat thought experiment. Imagine a brain kept alive in a vat, wired to a supercomputer simulating sensory experiences. The brain would have no way of knowing it was in a vat. It would experience a full, rich world created by the computer. This scenario is often used to illustrate how reliant we are on our senses and perceptions, which can be manipulated or deceived. Just as the brain in a vat would accept the simulated world as reality, we might be accepting our own experiences without question. So Zhuangzi's question lingers. If we cannot rely on our senses, how can we determine what is real? At its core, the butterfly dream paradox doesn't provide an answer. It leaves us with an open-ended question, and perhaps that's the point. Zhuangzi's philosophy often emphasizes the idea of going with the flow, accepting the uncertainty of life rather than seeking concrete answers. He encourages us to embrace the mystery of existence and live harmoniously within it. One of the lessons we might draw from the butterfly dream paradox is that reality, whether objective or subjective, is complex and multifaceted. Just as we sometimes take our dreams seriously while we're in them, it's possible that our perception of reality might be just one layer in a much larger tapestry. Zhuangzi invites us not to view this as a limitation, but as a source of wonder. There's a poetic beauty in the idea that we might all be butterflies, flitting from one dream to another, each one feeling as real as the last. And if reality is indeed a dream, Zhuangzi seems to suggest that we should not struggle to dissect it. Instead, perhaps we can savor each moment, like the butterflies savoring each flight, each flower, each patch of sunlight. After all, whether we are butterflies or humans, the experience of being, even if uncertain, might be the greatest mystery of all. In the end, Zhuangzi's butterfly dream paradox isn't about solving the question of what is real or fake. It's about appreciating the mystery of perception itself. It reminds us that reality is perhaps not just about what we see or touch, but about the ever-shifting dance of experiences that makes life so rich, strange, and beautiful. The temporal experience theory. Have you ever noticed how time seems to fly when you're having fun, yet crawls at a snail's pace during that last hour of work? This curious relationship with time brings us to one of the most fascinating aspects of human consciousness, the temporal experience theory, which explores how our minds perceive and process the passage of time. Think of time like water flowing through a river. While the actual flow rate remains constant, our experience of it varies dramatically based on where we're standing and what we're doing. This is the essence of temporal experience, the subjective way we perceive time's passage, often in stark contrast to its objective measurement. Let's dive deeper through a simple example. Remember your last vacation? Those beautiful days probably felt like they zipped by in moments. Yet think back to your childhood summers, as they seem to stretch on endlessly. This isn't just nostalgia. It's a fundamental aspect of how our brains process temporal experience. The theory suggests that our perception of time isn't fixed like a metronome, but is instead highly malleable, influenced by several fascinating factors. The first is novelty. New experiences cause our brains to create more detailed memories, making time feel longer in retrospect. This explains why your first day at a new job feels longer than your 100th day. Your brain is working harder to process all the new information. Consider this. Researchers have found that time seems to speed up as we age. This isn't because our biological clocks run faster, but because we experience fewer novel situations. When you're 5 years old, everything is new. Each day brings unprecedented experiences, making time feel expansive. By the time you're 50, many experiences are routine, causing time to feel like it's rushing by. The theory also explains the holiday paradox, how vacations can feel quick while we're experiencing them, but long when we remember them. It's like your brain creates a detailed photo album of new experiences, making the memory feel rich and time-stretched, even though the actual experience might have felt brief. Emotion plays a crucial role too. Time seems to slow down during dangerous or frightening situations. Think of how a near-miss accident seems to happen in slow motion. This is your brain switching to high alert mode, processing information more quickly and creating an illusion of slowed time. It's like your mind's frame rate suddenly increases, capturing more detail in each moment. But perhaps most fascinating is how our attention shapes temporal experience. When you're fully engaged in an activity, what psychologists call flow state, time seems to disappear altogether. It's as if your consciousness temporarily steps outside the river of time. Conversely, when you're acutely aware of time's passage, like watching a clock during a boring meeting, each minute feels excruciatingly long. The theory has profound implications for how we live our lives. Understanding that novel experiences expand our perception of time suggests a solution to the feeling that life is rushing by. Seek out new experiences, learn new skills, visit new places. Each novel experience is like dropping a pebble in the river of time, creating ripples that slow its perceived flow. Moreover, this understanding can help us design our days more effectively. If we want time to feel richer and fuller, we might intentionally vary our routines, engage in new activities, or simply pay more attention to the present moment. It's like being both the photographer and the subject of your temporal experience, consciously choosing what to focus on and how to frame each moment. As you rest with these thoughts, consider how your own temporal experience shifts and changes. Notice how this very moment might feel different now that you're paying attention to it. Perhaps time isn't just something that happens to us, but something we actively participate in shaping through our attention, our choices, and our willingness to embrace new experiences. Remember, while we cannot control time's objective passage, we have remarkable influence over how we experience its flow. In understanding this, we gain a tool for making our finite time feel richer, fuller, and more meaningful. The egg theory. Imagine this. You're walking home after a long day, lost in thought, when suddenly everything goes dark. You blink, confused, and realize you're in a completely different place. There's no pain, no fear, just a gentle curiosity. A figure approaches, calm and knowing, and before you can even ask, they tell you, you're dead. But rather than fading into the unknown, you're about to learn something extraordinary. This is the starting point of the egg theory, a thought-provoking story by Andy Weir, the author of The Martian. In a few hundred words, this theory proposes an idea about life, consciousness, and the nature of existence that has captivated millions of readers. The egg theory invites us to consider a radical, mind-bending concept. What if we are all the same soul, reincarnating across time, experiencing every single life in the history of humanity? You're not just you. You are also every person who has ever lived, is living, and will live. In this framework, every relationship, every conflict, every kindness is, in essence, a connection with yourself. At its heart, the egg theory explores the concept of universal oneness. In most spiritual traditions, there is an underlying idea that all beings are interconnected, that we're all part of a larger whole. The egg theory takes this a step further, suggesting that this unity is literal, that every person you encounter is, in some way, a different version of you. When you hold a door open for a stranger, you're showing kindness to yourself. When you argue with someone, you're actually struggling with an aspect of your own nature. This perspective has profound implications. If everyone you meet is another version of you, then every act of compassion, empathy, and forgiveness becomes an act of self-love. When viewed through this lens, the moral philosophy of treat others as you would want to be treated isn't just a guideline for polite behavior. It becomes a fundamental truth of existence. In Weir's story, the protagonist learns about this concept through a conversation with a being who may be God, or perhaps simply a higher form of consciousness. This being explains that Earth is essentially an egg, where souls incubate. Life after life, they are reincarnated in different forms and circumstances, gradually learning, experiencing, and evolving. When every possible life has been lived, when every perspective has been understood, the soul will hatch from the egg, becoming something greater, perhaps even like this godlike figure. The God character implies that the purpose of life isn't about achieving individual greatness or accumulating material success. Instead, it's about gaining empathy, understanding, and wisdom. The journey isn't just about your life as you currently know it. It's about understanding the full range of human experience, from the heights of joy to the depths of despair. In the grand scheme, your current identity is only a single thread in a vast, interconnected tapestry. If everyone you encounter is another version of yourself, then empathy becomes more than an emotional response. It becomes a necessity. Think of it this way. If you were to experience every person's life, wouldn't it make sense to treat everyone with compassion? After all, their struggles and triumphs are, in this theory, your own. The egg theory encourages us to view human conflict, discrimination, and prejudice as misunderstandings within ourselves, a failure to recognize our shared consciousness. This idea reflects the principle of non-duality, a concept in many Eastern philosophies that emphasizes the illusion of separation. According to non-duality, the distinctions between you and me, us and them, are ultimately false, mere constructs of our minds. The egg theory takes this idea into a fictional yet deeply insightful context by suggesting that everyone is one soul. It challenges us to think beyond our individual boundaries and to see ourselves in others. The egg theory also touches on ideas found in Hinduism and Buddhism, where reincarnation and karma are key components. However, it deviates in its assertion of a single soul rather than multiple. In Hinduism, the concept of Atman, or the individual soul, is part of Brahman, the universal soul. Buddhism teaches that the self is an illusion, and the journey is about dissolving the ego. The egg theory simplifies these ideas into a single, digestible concept, making it accessible for readers of all backgrounds. By envisioning every life as part of one soul's journey, it offers a unifying perspective that aligns with spiritual themes without requiring adherence to any specific belief system. We'd see, beyond spirituality, the egg theory also aligns with certain principles in quantum physics and consciousness studies. Some interpretations of quantum mechanics suggest that consciousness itself might be a fundamental element of reality, woven into the fabric of existence. While scientists haven't found any empirical basis for reincarnation or the existence of a universal consciousness, the egg theory offers a fictional yet fascinating thought experiment that bridges these scientific mysteries with human experience. The Matrix. Imagine if one day you discovered that everything you know, the world, your relationships, even the very air you breathe, is part of an elaborate simulation. You're a character in a system that looks real, feels real, and even fools your own mind. Welcome to The Matrix, a thought experiment that explores the boundaries between reality, illusion, and control. While the Matrix concept became popular through the 1999 film, it has deep philosophical roots that question whether reality itself could be an illusion. The film might be fiction, but its questions about perception, technology, and existence resonate with some of the most intriguing ideas in philosophy and science. At its core, the Matrix theory asks, can we trust our perceptions? Everything we know about reality comes through our senses: sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell. What if our senses could be manipulated? Would we even know? In a way, we're all plugged into a matrix of our own, our brains. Every experience, from the warmth of sunlight to the taste of food, is processed in the mind. The brain relies on electrical impulses and chemical signals, not unlike a computer processing code. But if these signals were intercepted and replaced with artificial ones, our brains might still interpret them as real. In the movie, humanity is trapped within a virtual construct, a world that only exists in their minds, used as batteries. This premise builds on an idea explored by philosophers like René Descartes, who proposed the possibility of an evil demon that could be deceiving us into believing in a false reality. Today, we might substitute Descartes' demon with advanced artificial intelligence, asking whether a machine could fool us just as easily. The matrix concept has philosophical precedents going back thousands of years. One of the most well-known is Plato's allegory of the cave. Imagine prisoners chained inside a dark cave facing a blank wall. They've been there since birth, so they've never seen the outside world. Behind them, a fire burns, and people pass in front of the fire, casting shadows on the wall. The prisoners see these shadows and hear echoes, and to them, this is reality. One day, a prisoner escapes and sees the world outside the cave: the sun, trees, rivers, and people. He realizes that the shadows he's known his whole life were just illusions. In Plato's allegory, the journey out of the cave is a journey toward knowledge and enlightenment, the realization that there is a reality beyond what we directly perceive. The Matrix updates this allegory for the digital age. Instead of shadows on a wall, humans in the Matrix experience a fully immersive illusion designed to keep them docile and unaware of their real situation. But the lesson remains the same. Breaking free from illusion requires questioning reality, a difficult task in a world where illusion feels as real as any physical sensation. The Matrix idea isn't just a fantasy for the screen. The concept has real-world proponents among philosophers and scientists who propose simulation theory, the idea that our universe could be an artificial simulation. The argument was famously put forward by philosopher Nick Bostrom, who suggested that advanced civilizations might create simulations so sophisticated that their inhabitants would believe they were real. If this were possible, and if such civilizations created many simulations, it could be statistically likely that we're living in one of them. Bostrom's theory doesn't claim to prove we're in a simulation, but it challenges us to consider the possibility. After all, if we already have virtual reality technology and advancing AI, could it be only a matter of time before simulations are indistinguishable from the real world? If that's the case, then our very reality could be an advanced simulation, controlled by beings or systems beyond our understanding. The Matrix also explores questions of free will and determinism. In the film, Neo is told he has a choice. Take the red pill to wake up to the real world, or take the blue pill to remain in the simulated comfort of the Matrix. This choice is symbolic, presenting a philosophical question that goes beyond the movie's plot. Do we have genuine freedom, or are our actions controlled by unseen forces? The Matrix implies that as long as we remain within the bounds of a controlled reality, our choices might be manipulated by the rules of that reality. This idea echoes deterministic philosophies, which argue that everything we do is the result of prior causes: our environment, biology, and the systems we're part of. In The Matrix, Neo's choice to rebel against his artificial reality symbolizes a struggle for autonomy and authenticity in a world that constantly shapes us. One of the most compelling aspects of The Matrix is its exploration of awakening. In philosophical terms, awakening is often seen as enlightenment, a moment of clarity where one sees reality as it truly is, free from illusions or biases. For Neo, taking the red pill is his awakening. He chooses to see the truth, however painful or disorienting it may be. The Matrix suggests that enlightenment isn't necessarily about finding new knowledge, but about questioning the knowledge we already have. This moment of awakening resonates with many spiritual traditions, from Buddhism's concept of enlightenment to Socrates' famous assertion that the unexamined life is not worth living. The red pill represents the willingness to question, to confront uncomfortable truths, and to risk leaving behind the comfort of familiar illusions. In our own world, the Matrix metaphor is often applied to modern life, where technology, media, and social structures can act as a kind of matrix of their own. Algorithms influence our choices. Social media shapes our perceptions. The pressures of consumer culture tell us what to value. Just as Neo breaks free from his simulated world, we are challenged to recognize the forces that influence us and to decide whether we accept or resist them. Ultimately, the Matrix leaves us with an open-ended question. How do we know what is real? And if reality could be manipulated, do we have the courage to seek the truth, no matter the cost? The red pill symbolizes a universal human choice, the choice to seek truth and authenticity in a world that often presents comfortable illusions. For anyone who has ever wondered if there's more to life than what meets the eye, the Matrix is a powerful reminder that the journey to understand reality is as transformative as it is unsettling. And like Neo, we are all invited to take that leap, to wake up, and to question the nature of the world we call home. The experience machine. Theory. Suppose a machine that can give you the perfect life, every experience you've ever wanted, traveling the world, falling in love, achieving fame, could be yours at the push of a button. This isn't a fantasy, it's a thought experiment called the experience machine, proposed by philosopher Robert Nozick in 1974. He presented it as a challenge to a popular philosophical idea known as hedonism, which says that happiness or pleasure is the highest good and the only thing that truly matters in life. But here's the catch. Once you're plugged into the machine, you won't know you're inside it. Every experience will feel real, every sensation vivid, but it will all be artificial. The machine will stimulate your brain, making you feel like you're living the life of your dreams. So would you choose to plug in? The experience machine presents a tantalizing question. If pleasure and happiness are the only things that truly matter, then why shouldn't we plug into the machine? If the machine can give us everything we desire and make us feel happy all the time, wouldn't that be the best possible life? But Nozick's point was to challenge this very assumption. By asking whether we'd plug in, he's asking us to consider what we value most in life. Is pleasure really the ultimate goal? Or do we also value authenticity, genuine relationships, personal growth, and the sense of accomplishment that comes from facing real challenges? Imagine being able to program your life experiences like a movie script. You could decide that tomorrow you'll wake up as a world-renowned artist or a successful entrepreneur. You could design a love story that's free from heartbreak or a career that's free from failure. This vision of a perfect, pleasure-filled existence seems like ultimate escape from the hardships of reality. The machine offers a reality where there are no disappointments, no unfulfilled dreams, and no setbacks. Every moment would be crafted to maximize your happiness and eliminate all suffering. At first glance, it sounds like an easy choice. After all, who doesn't want happiness and pleasure? But Nozick argued that if we stop and think about it, many of us would hesitate to plug in. The machine strips away everything that makes life unpredictable, real, and uniquely ours. It gives us happiness, but it takes away the meaning that comes from real experiences, relationships, and personal achievements. Why would anyone hesitate to enter the experience machine? Nozick suggested that we value more than just feeling good. We want our experiences to be real. We don't just want the feeling of achieving something. We want to actually achieve it. There's a profound difference between the simulated feeling of climbing a mountain and the actual experience of struggling up each step, feeling the burn in your legs, and reaching the summit. In essence, Nozick believed that we crave authenticity. The idea of experiencing love, success, or adventure in a simulated reality might feel hollow because we know it's not genuinely happening. The love in the machine is programmed. The challenges are artificial. The victories are predetermined. Without the possibility of failure, can success even hold a real meaning? One of the things that the experience machine lacks is struggle. Real life includes challenges, setbacks, and pain. But these are also the moments where we grow, learn, and transform. Nozick's thought experiment touches on the idea that growth comes through overcoming real obstacles, not merely experiencing pleasure. Think about a story where the hero always succeeds, never faces any hardships, and wins every battle easily. It would quickly become a boring story, wouldn't it? In the same way, a life without real challenges might feel empty. The experience. Machine can give us pleasure, but it denies us the journey, the failures, and the lessons that make real achievements meaningful. Another issue with the experience machine is that it removes our sense of control. Once you're inside, The machine decides what happens. You've pre-programmed your life to bring you happiness, but you're no longer an active participant in it. Instead, you're simply receiving experiences like a movie playing in front of your eyes. In real life, every decision we make shapes who we are, from the small choices to the life-altering ones. Being in the machine would mean giving up this autonomy, the freedom to make choices and to discover ourselves through them. In a way, this thought experiment reflects the human need for self-discovery. Real life offers surprises, unexpected turns, and opportunities for self-reflection. The machine, however, offers a closed loop of experiences that reflect only what you think you want, without the possibility of discovering something new. Nozick's experience. Machine raises profound questions about what makes life worth living. Are pleasure and happiness enough? Or do we need authenticity, struggle, autonomy, and growth to feel truly alive? The thought experiment doesn't give us a definitive answer, but it invites us to reflect on our own values. If we say we wouldn't plug into the machine, it might be because we value a life that's rich with the messiness and complexity of reality. We want relationships that are real, achievements that are earned, and a life that unfolds in ways we can't always control. The experience machine challenges us to define our own sense of purpose. In the end, it's not a question of whether the machine could give us happiness. It's about whether happiness alone would be enough for us to feel that we're truly living. The Library of Babel concept. Picture yourself at a library so vast contains every single book ever written, and every book that could ever be written. In its endless corridors, you'd find a text with the complete works of Shakespeare, but also countless near duplicates where every letter is off by one. Somewhere, there's a book that holds the exact description of your life from birth to this very moment, as well as countless others that detail versions of your life that you never lived. This is the Library of Babel, an idea conceived by the Argentine writer Jorge Luis Borges in 1941. In Borges's mind-bending short story, the Library of Babel is not just a literary device, but a philosophical concept that challenges our understanding of infinity, knowledge, and meaning. Imagine walking into this library. The shelves extend in every direction as far as the eye can see, row after row, shelf after shelf, all filled with books that contain every possible arrangement of letters and punctuation. Borges imagined each book as 410 pages long, each page with a fixed number of letters. In such a library, there would be books that contain profound insights into the universe, mixed with books that are pure gibberish, and others that are almost right but not quite. It's a powerful metaphor for human knowledge and the search for meaning in a vast and often incomprehensible universe. The library, with its infinite possibilities, is a paradox. It holds every truth, every answer. But it's also mostly noise, an overwhelming ocean of meaningless text. To truly understand the Library of Babel, we need to dive into the philosophical implications of infinity, randomness, and our search for meaning. Jorge Luis Borges was deeply fascinated by the nature of knowledge and the limits of human understanding. In his short story, The Library of Babel, he describes a universe that is, in fact, a library. An infinite array of hexagonal rooms, each filled with books that together contain every possible combination of letters. This library embodies infinity in the purest sense, a place where everything exists, but almost nothing makes sense. The concept wasn't just a literary invention. It reflects questions that philosophers and mathematicians have pondered for centuries. How do we navigate an infinite realm of information? How do we find meaning in a universe that seems indifferent, where truth is hidden among countless falsehoods? Borges used the Library of Babel to push these questions to their limits. At the heart of the Library of Babel lies the concept of infinity. In an infinite library, every possible book exists, but so does every incorrect version of that book. Somewhere in this library, there is a book that describes exactly how the universe works, down to the finest detail. But the vast majority of books are filled with random sequences of letters, making it nearly impossible to find anything meaningful. It's like looking for a needle in an endless stack of hay. This brings us to a profound philosophical point. In an infinite universe, even if all knowledge exists, most of it might be inaccessible or buried in noise. Imagine trying to find a single meaningful sentence in an ocean of nonsense. The Library of Babel suggests that even if every answer is out there, the vastness of possibilities makes finding it almost hopeless. The Library of Babel serves as a powerful analogy for the internet, where we have access to more information than ever before. Just like the library, the internet holds both profound truths and endless misinformation. We live in an age where knowledge is abundant, but distinguishing valuable information from irrelevant or misleading content is an enormous challenge. Borges foresaw this problem long before the digital age, hinting at the difficulty of finding meaningful insights amidst overwhelming noise. In Borges's library, the endless corridors of books are also a metaphor for the human quest for meaning. We are constantly searching for answers about ourselves, our place in the universe, and the nature of reality. But the Library of Babel warns us that even if we had access to infinite knowledge, much of it would still be incomprehensible or useless. One of the most fascinating aspects of Borges's library is how it reflects our deep-seated curiosity and desire to understand the universe. Even though the majority of books in the library are gibberish, the inhabitants of Borges's world are driven to explore, hoping to find just one book that contains a coherent answer. The librarians in Borges's story spend their lives searching for meaning, piecing together fragments of understanding from books that are often nonsensical. It's a journey that mirrors the human condition, our endless search for knowledge in a world that sometimes feels vast and unknowable. In this way, the Library of Babel resonates with the existentialist idea that we must create our own meaning in an indifferent universe. Just as the librarians search for purpose in an endless sea of information, we too search for meaning in a world that doesn't always offer clear answers. The Library of Babel challenges us to think about the nature of knowledge, randomness, and meaning. In its infinite shelves, every truth exists, but so does every falsehood, every meaningless sequence, and every possible version of every possible story. The library is both a paradise and a prison, offering the promise of infinite knowledge, but also confronting us with the impossibility of finding it. Through this concept, Borges reminds us that the pursuit of knowledge is not just about collecting facts or seeking definitive answers. It's also about navigating uncertainty, embracing the unknown, and finding value in the journey itself. Like the librarians of the infinite library, we are all searching for meaning, hoping to find coherence amidst the chaos. And perhaps in that search, we create our own purpose, turning a vast, incomprehensible universe into something personally meaningful. The Library of Babel, then, is a reflection of life itself, an infinite, bewildering expanse where we, the explorers, must find our own way through the shelves. The infinite hotel paradox. Let's suppose there is a hotel with an infinite number of rooms. No matter how many guests arrive, there's always room for one more. This place isn't just a thought experiment. It's a fascinating way to explore the concept of infinity itself. First proposed by mathematician David Hilbert, the infinite hotel paradox challenges our understanding of space, numbers, and what we think is logically possible. While it's impossible to build such a hotel in reality, thinking about it opens doors to understanding infinity in ways that are surprising and even a bit unsettling. Picture this. You arrive at Hilbert's Infinite Hotel, a grand structure that stretches beyond what the eye can see. The hotel's lobby is filled with guests checking in, yet every single room is already occupied. An infinite hotel with an infinite number of guests, that's a paradox in itself. How can there be a room for you if every room is full? Hilbert's Infinite Hotel confronts this with a clever twist. Since the hotel has infinite rooms, there's a way to make space for any newcomer. The solution seems straightforward, but opens up mind-bending implications about infinity and endlessness, challenging what we think is possible. So you've arrived at the Infinite Hotel and all the rooms are full. How can the manager accommodate you? Surprisingly, it's easy. The manager simply moves the guest in room 1 to room 2. the guest in room 2 to room 3, and so on down the line. In other words, each guest is shifted over by one room. Now room 1 is open, and you can check in. Even though the hotel was fully occupied, one more guest can always be accommodated in an infinite system. This seemingly simple solution becomes more interesting when you realize that no matter how many guests arrive, this shifting method can accommodate all of them. If an infinite bus with an infinite number of passengers shows up, each guest in the hotel can be moved to double their room number, room 1 to room 2, room 2 to room 4, and so on, freeing up every odd-numbered room for the new arrivals. By shifting the guests in specific ways, the manager can find space for an infinite number of new guests over and over again. At the heart of Hilbert's infinite hotel, paradox is the idea that infinity isn't one-size-fits-all in mathematics. Some infinities are bigger than others, which sounds strange at first. For example, the set of all whole numbers 1, 2, 3 is infinite, but the set of all real numbers, including fractions and decimals between 0 and 1, is an even larger infinity. This concept, developed by mathematician Georg Cantor, challenges the notion of infinity as something singular and introduces us to the idea of countable and uncountable infinities. Hilbert's hotel represents a countably infinite set because we can assign a room number to each guest in a sequence, 1, 2, 3. However, if guests started arriving who each needed infinite space, let's say each one represents a decimal between 0 and 1, there would be no way to fit them into the hotel without some rooms remaining empty. This distinction between types of infinities shows us that some infinities can contain other infinities, a concept both simple in theory but perplexing in its implications. Hilbert's infinite hotel helps us see that the rules governing infinity are unlike anything we encounter in the finite world. In everyday life, if every room in a hotel is full, there's no way to fit in another guest without kicking someone out. But in the infinite hotel, new rules apply, and these rules teach us about the possibilities and limitations of infinity. Infinity, as represented by Hilbert's hotel, allows for endless possibilities. Yet this endlessness leads to paradoxes that challenge a fundamental understanding. For instance, if the hotel is always full, does that mean it's ever really empty? And if you keep adding guests, does the hotel actually grow? These questions are absurd, but they're also profound. They reveal the strange, counterintuitive ways infinity behaves when it's applied to practical scenarios. The infinite hotel paradox is more than just a clever riddle. It has real implications for fields like mathematics, physics, and philosophy. In cosmology, for instance, the concept of an infinite universe brings up similar questions about space, matter, and the limits of our understanding. If the universe is infinite, can it ever be full? And if there's always room for more galaxies, stars, and planets, what does that mean for our place in the cosmos? In the realm of philosophy, the paradox raises questions about the nature of existence and reality. Just as Hilbert's hotel can infinitely accommodate, does it mean that possibilities in life and thought are also infinite? Or does infinity suggest that there are no true limits, only constructs we impose upon the boundless? Hilbert's infinite hotel is a mind-bending concept, but it gives us a way to approach the unfathomable concept of infinity. By considering what it would mean to run a hotel with infinite rooms, we catch a glimpse into the vast, complex world of infinite sets, countability, and paradoxes that make up the world of higher mathematics. It's a thought experiment that stretches our minds beyond the finite limits we're used to, showing us that in some realms, there truly is always room for one more. The next time you see a hotel with a no vacancy sign, you might just wonder what it would take to turn it into a place with infinite possibilities. A hotel where everyone is welcome, no matter how many guests arrive, in a place where the rules we know simply don't apply. The Fermi Paradox. You're standing on a quiet hilltop, looking up at a night sky splattered with stars. Some of these stars have their own planets, some of which might even look something like Earth. And in one of those far-off worlds, there might be beings looking up just like you are. But if there's so much potential for life out there, then a question emerges like an uninvited guest. Why haven't we heard from anyone yet? This question, this unsettling silence from the cosmos, is what the Fermi Paradox seeks to explore. It's named after physicist Enrico Fermi, who, in the middle of a casual lunch in 1950, asked, "Where is everybody?" A simple question with implications as deep as the universe itself. The Fermi Paradox isn't just about the absence of little green men waving at us. It's about reconciling the high probability of extraterrestrial life with the eerie quiet that seems to surround us. To break it down, the paradox rests on a few fundamental ideas. First, that the universe is unbelievably vast. Second, that within this vastness there should be other intelligent civilizations. Statistically, given the age of the universe and the countless billions of stars and planets, it seems almost certain that intelligent life should have arisen elsewhere. And if these civilizations have had millions or even billions of years to develop, some of them should have advanced far beyond our current technological stage, to the point where they could theoretically communicate with or even visit us. So why silence? One possible answer lies in something called the Great Filter. Imagine that along the journey from simple life to advanced spacefaring civilizations, there are immense hurdles or filters that most life forms don't survive. This great filter could be something behind us. Maybe life itself is incredibly rare, or maybe complex multicellular organisms are unlikely to arise. In that case, we might already be past the hardest part, and we're on our way to actually making contact with other civilizations. But there's a darker possibility. What if the great filter lies ahead of us? Perhaps intelligent civilizations inevitably self-destruct or face an unavoidable cosmic disaster. If that's the case, then the silence might be a warning rather than a mystery. Another theory speculates that advanced civilizations have simply chosen to stay silent, either to avoid drawing attention to themselves or to observe us without interference, as if a cosmic nature reserve. This idea is known as the zoo hypothesis, suggesting that more advanced beings might find us fascinating but primitive, worth studying, but not worth interacting with directly. They're out there, but they're simply watching from afar, letting us evolve without interference. And then there's the possibility that we're looking in the wrong way or perhaps listening on the wrong channels. Imagine tuning a radio to a specific station, but the broadcast is on a frequency we haven't even considered yet. Or perhaps their methods of communication are so advanced that they're invisible to us, like sending a letter to someone who only uses email. It could be that, out in the universe, signals are flowing back and forth, but we simply don't have the means or the knowledge to detect them. For some, the answer to the Fermi Paradox might be that we are indeed alone, that Earth is the rare exception in a quiet cosmos. This idea, known as the rare Earth hypothesis, suggests that conditions like ours are so unique that it's unlikely they exist anywhere else. If true, then life as we know it might be a spectacular anomaly in the universe. In contemplating the Fermi Paradox, we're not just searching for life in distant star systems. We're seeking our place in the vast story of the universe. Are we a common chapter, one among many? Or are we the universe's only storytellers? The Fermi Paradox doesn't give us answers. It merely opens up the space for questions as deep and vast as the night sky. It challenges our assumptions and reminds us of the immensity of what we don't know, nudging us to look up with a bit more wonder, and perhaps a hint of trepidation. The overview effect. Picture this. You are in space, far above Earth, surrounded by the endless dark canvas of the cosmos, staring down at the blue and green sphere we call home. In this moment, you see no borders, no countries, no divisions, only a single, interconnected planet floating in the infinite vastness. This profound shift in perspective is called the overview effect, an extraordinary and often life-changing experience reported by astronauts who've seen Earth from space. The overview effect is not simply the awe of a beautiful view. It's a transformative moment that alters the way one perceives humanity, nature, and even existence itself. Astronauts who experience it often describe an overwhelming sense of unity and interconnectedness, a feeling that every person, creature, and ecosystem on Earth is part of a single, fragile whole. But what exactly causes this change? And why does seeing Earth from space make such a dramatic impact on one's psyche? To explore these questions, we'll dive into the concept of the overview effect and unpack the lessons it offers for how we live on this planet. The term overview effect was first coined by space philosopher Frank White in the 1980s. In interviews with astronauts, White discovered that nearly all of them experienced a profound cognitive shift when observing Earth from orbit. He described this effect as a sudden realization that the world's political, religious, and cultural conflicts seem trivial compared to the vastness of space and the fragile beauty of Earth. From space, Earth appears as a tiny, self-contained ecosystem without visible boundaries. In White's words, the overview effect catalyzes a sense of responsibility and empathy, encouraging individuals to become advocates for the preservation and care of our planet. One of the most famous instances of the overview effect occurred during the Apollo 8 mission in 1968, when astronauts captured the now iconic Earthrise photo. For the first time in history, humanity saw Earth from beyond its orbit, a beautiful and isolated orb in the endless blackness of space. This image became a powerful symbol for the environmental movement, as people around the world began to grasp the interconnectedness of Earth's ecosystems and the need to protect them. To understand why this experience resonates so deeply, let's use an analogy. Imagine living in a tiny town your whole life thinking it's the entire world. Your perspectives, beliefs, and concerns are shaped by what happens within the borders of this town. But then one day, you climb to the top of a nearby mountain. From this vantage point, you can see dozens of other towns, forests, and rivers stretching out into the horizon. Suddenly, the issues that seem so pressing in your town feel smaller, and you realize you're part of a much larger landscape. In a way, the overview effect is like climbing that mountain. Except instead of seeing neighboring towns, you see all of humanity united on a single, isolated planet. Astronauts often say that the overview effect permanently alters their priorities and sense of purpose. The experience tends to foster a deep sense of stewardship toward Earth and a desire to promote peace, unity, and environmental protection. Dr. Edgar Mitchell, an Apollo 14 astronaut, described it as an instant global consciousness that emerged from seeing the interconnectedness of all life on Earth. He said, "You develop an intense dissatisfaction with the state of the world and a compulsion to do something about it." Mitchell went on to become an advocate for environmental causes and dedicated his life to promoting sustainable practices. The overview effect also prompts philosophical questions about identity and existence. From the perspective of space, the boundaries that divide nations, races, and religions disappear, leaving only one shared home. This profound unity challenges the way people typically define themselves, encouraging a more expansive sense of identity. It pushes individuals to see themselves as Earthlings rather than by national or cultural labels, emphasizing a shared humanity rather than divisions. The lessons of the overview effect reach far beyond astronauts. They are relevant to every person on Earth. Although most of us won't have the chance to view Earth from space, we can still tap into this mindset by looking at images of Earth from space, exploring nature, and learning about the interconnectedness of ecosystems. We can foster a similar sense of unity and responsibility. The overview effect calls on us to shift from thinking in terms of me to we, recognizing that our actions impact everyone and everything on this delicate, life-supporting planet. In an age when environmental issues, political conflicts, and social divides seem more pressing than ever, the overview effect reminds us of the bigger picture. Earth is our shared home, and its well-being is inextricably tied to our own. Embracing this perspective can inspire us to take actions that reflect care, empathy, and responsibility toward all living beings and the planet itself. By understanding the overview effect, we don't just gain insight into the mindset of astronauts. we gain a powerful reminder of what unites us. It's a call to action for everyone to live with greater consciousness and compassion, knowing that we are all, in the grand expanse of the universe, passengers on the same fragile spaceship. The spotlight effect theory. Picture yourself walking into a crowded cafe. You've just spilled a few drops of coffee on your white shirt. Your heart races, and suddenly it feels like every single person in that cafe is staring at you, judging you, noticing that small brown stain that seems to be screaming for attention. In your mind, you become the center of a spotlight that doesn't actually exist. This, dear listeners, is the spotlight effect theory, our tendency to overestimate how much other people notice about us, both our failures and our triumphs. Think of it as wearing a pair of glasses that magnifies how visible we think we are to others, when in reality everyone else is wearing their own pair, focused on themselves. The term was coined by psychologists Thomas Gilovich and Kenneth Savitsky in 1999, but the phenomenon has been part of human experience for as long as we've had self-consciousness. In their groundbreaking study, they asked college students to wear an embarrassing t-shirt, one with a large picture of Barry Manilow, into a room full of their peers. Before entering, the students predicted that about half of the people in the room would notice their shirt. In reality, only about 25% did. Why does this happen? Imagine you're the director of your own life's movie. You're always at the center of your own experience. Every thought, every emotion, every minor embarrassment plays out on your personal main stage. But here's the beautiful truth. Everyone else is the director of their own movie too. While you're worrying about that small coffee stain, they're probably consumed by their own narratives, their own concerns, their own spotlight effects. Let's explore this deeper through another story. Sarah, a public speaker, once gave a presentation where she stumbled over her words for a brief moment. For days afterward, she was convinced that this tiny mistake had ruined her entire speech and that everyone remembered it. But when she asked audience members later, most couldn't even recall the stumble. They remembered her insights, her presence, but not the small imperfection that had seemed so glaring to her. The spotlight effect teaches us something profoundly liberating. We are both more and less important than we imagine. More important in our own internal world. Less important in everyone else's. This isn't because others don't care about us, but because they're caught up in their own spotlight effects, their own internal movies. Think about how this knowledge might free you. That awkward moment in the meeting. Most people have already forgotten it. That mismatched outfit you wore last week, it likely registered for mere seconds in others' minds, if at all. The spotlight effect is like a magnifying mirror. It shows us our flaws in high definition, but no one else is looking through that same mirror. Understanding this can be incredibly liberating. It doesn't mean we should stop caring about how we present ourselves or what we contribute to the world. Rather, it invites us to be more compassionate with ourselves, to understand that our perceived spotlight is often just that, perceived. As you drift towards sleep tonight, consider releasing yourself from your self-imposed spotlight. Remember that just as the stars in the night sky shine without worrying who's watching, you too can move through life with less self-consciousness and more self-acceptance. The spotlight effect is merely an illusion of our minds, and in recognizing it, we find a kind of freedom. The freedom to be imperfectly, beautifully human. The Barnum Effect. You have a great need for others to like and admire you, yet you tend to be critical of yourself. While you have some personality weaknesses, you are generally able to compensate for them. You have considerable unused capacity that you have not turned to your advantage. How accurate does this description feel to you? Do you find yourself nodding along, thinking how perfectly it captures your personality? If so, you've just experienced the Barnum Effect, a fascinating psychological phenomenon where we accept vague, general personality descriptions as uniquely specific to ourselves, when in reality they could apply to almost anyone. Named after P.T. Barnum, the legendary showman who famously said, "There's a sucker born every minute," the Barnum Effect is like a mirror that shows us what we want to see. Imagine walking into a hall of mirrors at a carnival. Each mirror seems to show you something unique and personal. But in reality, they're all showing slightly different versions of the same reflection. Let me share a revealing story. In 1948, psychologist Bertram Fourier conducted an intriguing experiment. He gave his students a personality test and told them they would each receive a unique personality analysis. A week later, he gave each student what they believed was their personalized analysis. The students rated the accuracy of their analysis on a scale of 0 to 5, with an average score of 4.26, meaning they found it highly accurate. But here's the twist. Every student received exactly the same analysis. This effect explains why horoscopes feel so personally relevant, why fortune tellers seem mysteriously accurate, and why personality tests can feel so revealing. It's like being handed a key that seems perfectly shaped for your lock, only to discover it's a master key that opens many doors. First, there's our natural tendency toward confirmation bias. Like a detective who's already decided on the culprit, we actively look for evidence that confirms what we want to believe about ourselves. Second, these statements often contain what psychologists call double-headed statements. You can be outgoing and sociable, but sometimes you prefer quiet solitude. It's like describing water as both wet and capable of being frozen. Both are true, but they seem contradictory. Think about social media personality quizzes. Which ancient god are you? Or what's your spirit animal? They work because they tap into this effect, providing descriptions broad enough to fit anyone but specific enough to feel personal. It's like wearing a one-size-fits-all garment that's been cleverly marketed as custom-tailored. But understanding the Barnum Effect isn't about becoming cynical. Rather, it's about developing a more nuanced understanding of how we perceive ourselves and how we process information about our personalities. It's like having a map that shows not just where we are, but also the optical illusions along the way. The real magic lies in recognizing that while we all share common human experiences and traits, our individual stories and choices make these universal experiences uniquely our own. Yes, we might all experience anxiety about the future, but your specific dreams and fears are still uniquely yours. As you rest with this knowledge, consider how this understanding might change how you interpret personality descriptions, horoscopes, or even compliments. Perhaps true self-knowledge isn't found in vague, universal statements, but in the specific, concrete experiences that shape our individual journeys. The Mandala Effect. The Mandala Effect, a fascinating phenomenon where large groups of people share the same false memories, remembering events or details differently from what historically occurred. It's as if we're all reading from slightly different versions of reality's script. The term was coined by Fiona Broome in 2009, when she discovered that thousands of people, like herself, clearly remembered Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. But here's the reality twist. Mandela was actually released from prison in 1990 and passed away in 2013. This shared false memory was so widespread and vivid that it sparked a deeper investigation into this curious phenomenon of collective misremembering. Think of memory like a massive library, where each book is written by thousands of different authors simultaneously. Sometimes these authors inadvertently influence each other's stories, creating a blend of fact and fiction that becomes accepted as truth. It's like a game of telephone played not with words, but with memories spanning across millions of minds. Let's explore some of the most compelling examples. Remember the beloved Monopoly man? Many of us can picture him clearly with his top hat, suit, and monocle. Yet he never had a monocle. That's a detail our collective consciousness somehow invented. Or consider the famous logo of Fruit of the Loom. Countless people remember a cornucopia behind the fruit, but it was never there. It's as if we're all remembering a painting that was never painted. But why does this happen? Cognitive scientists suggest several fascinating explanations. First, there's the concept of confabulation. Our brain's tendency to fill in gaps in our memory with details that make logical sense. Like an artist touching up a faded photograph, our minds add details that seem like they should be there. Then there's the power of social reinforcement. When we share memories with others who remember things the same way, it strengthens our conviction in these false memories. It's like a group of friends all agreeing on the details of a shared experience, even if those details aren't quite accurate. Some theorists have proposed more exotic explanations, suggesting parallel universes or glitches in the matrix. While these theories might seem far-fetched, they speak to our deep human need to make sense of shared experiences that don't quite align with reality. The Mandala Effect teaches us something profound about the nature of memory and shared human experience. Our memories aren't like perfect digital recordings. They're more like impressionist paintings, capturing the feeling and essence of moments rather than exact details. Each time we recall a memory, we're not accessing the original file, but rather recreating it anew, sometimes with subtle alterations. Perhaps the most beautiful aspect of the Mandela Effect is how it connects us. These shared false memories become part of our collective cultural tapestry, reminding us that even in our misrememberings, we're united. It's like we're all looking at the same stars but seeing slightly different constellations. As you drift towards sleep, consider your own memories. How many might be slightly different from reality? And does it matter? Perhaps what's most important isn't the perfect accuracy of our memories, but the shared human experience they represent, the stories we tell ourselves and each other about the world we inhabit together. The Baader-Meinhof phenomenon. Have you ever bought a new car and suddenly started seeing that exact model everywhere? Or learned a new word only to find it popping up in every book you read? If so, you've experienced the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon, also known as the frequency illusion, a fascinating quirk of human consciousness that makes us notice things more often once they've captured our attention. Imagine your mind as a vast ocean of information with countless fish swimming by every moment. Usually, most of these fish pass unnoticed. But when something catches your attention, let's say a bright yellow fish, suddenly you start noticing yellow fish everywhere. They haven't actually become more numerous. You've just become more attuned to their presence. This phenomenon got its unusual name in 1994, when a newspaper reader noticed the term Baader-Meinhof twice in short succession and mentioned this coincidence to others. Ironically, people then began noticing the phrase Baader-Meinhof everywhere, perfectly demonstrating the very effect it described. The science behind this phenomenon involves two distinct cognitive processes working in harmony. The first is selective attention, which is like having a mental spotlight that automatically illuminates certain things once they've caught our interest. The second is confirmation bias, our tendency to notice and remember instances that confirm our expectations while overlooking those that don't. Let me share a story that illustrates this beautifully. Sarah, an art student, learned about a relatively obscure artistic technique called chiaroscuro, the use of strong contrast between light and dark. In the following weeks, she began noticing chiaroscuro everywhere, in photography, magazines, movie posters, even in the way sunlight fell across her kitchen table. The technique hadn't suddenly become more prevalent. Her brain had simply created a new filter through which to view the world. This effect goes beyond simple pattern recognition. It reveals something profound about how our consciousness shapes our reality. Consider how many times you walked down your street without noticing the bird songs, only to have them become unmissable once someone points them out. The birds were always there, singing their songs, but they existed outside your conscious awareness. The Baader-Meinhof phenomenon reminds us that our perception of reality is not a perfect mirror of what exists, but rather a carefully curated experience shaped by our attention and expectations. It's as if our consciousness is a skilled DJ, mixing and amplifying certain frequencies while letting others fade into the background. This phenomenon has practical implications too. Marketers understand that once you notice their product, you'll start seeing it everywhere, creating an illusion of ubiquity. Politicians know that once they plant an idea, supporters will begin noticing evidence that confirms it everywhere they look. Even in our personal lives, when we learn about a new concept or theory, we often find evidence of it in unexpected places. But there's also something beautiful about this quirk of consciousness. It reminds us that the world is infinitely richer and more detailed than we typically notice. Each shift in our attention reveals new layers of reality that were always there, waiting to be discovered. It's like having access to countless radio stations but only being able to tune into a few at a time. Understanding the Baader-Meinhof phenomenon can make us more mindful of how our attention shapes our experience. It invites us to wonder, what else might we notice if we shifted our attention just slightly? What other patterns and connections are waiting to be discovered in the rich tapestry of our daily experience? As you drift towards sleep, consider what patterns your mind might be amplifying right now, and what new awareness tomorrow might bring. Remember that each day holds infinite potential for discovery, even in the most familiar surroundings. The beauty of this phenomenon lies not just in understanding it, but in recognizing how it enriches our experience of the world, making each day a potential adventure in perception and awareness. The philosophical razor of Halon. Never attribute to malice that which can be adequately explained by stupidity. These words, known as Halon's razor, might sound harsh at first, but they contain a profound wisdom that could transform how you view the world and the people around you. Imagine you're waiting for an important email from a colleague. Hours pass, then days. Your mind begins weaving elaborate theories. They're deliberately ignoring me. They're trying to sabotage my project. They must be talking behind my back. But then you discover the truth. They simply typed your email address incorrectly. This simple scenario perfectly illustrates Halon's razor in action. This philosophical principle, named after Robert J. Halon, though its origins trace back much further, serves as a powerful mental tool, like a sharp blade that cuts through our tendency to assume the worst in others' motives. Think of it as a pair of special glasses that help you see the world more clearly, filtering out the distortions of paranoia and suspicion. Let's delve deeper through a story. Sarah, a software developer, once spent weeks believing her team member was deliberately undermining her code contributions. She crafted elaborate theories about professional jealousy and workplace politics. The reality? Her colleague was struggling with undiagnosed ADHD and was making genuine mistakes while trying his best to keep up with the workload. The moment Sarah applied Halon's razor, her entire perspective shifted from antagonism to empathy. But why do we so readily jump to assuming malice? The answer lies in our evolutionary history. Our ancestors survived by being hypervigilant about others' intentions. Those who assumed the rustling in the bushes was a predator rather than the wind were more likely to survive. We've inherited this cautious mindset, but in our modern world, it often leads us astray. The beauty of Halon's razor lies in its practical applications. In the workplace, it can transform toxic environments into collaborative spaces. In relationships, it can prevent unnecessary conflicts and foster understanding. In daily life, it can reduce stress and anxiety by offering simpler, less sinister explanations for others' actions. Consider these common scenarios. A friend doesn't respond to your text. Before assuming they're angry with you, consider that they might be overwhelmed with work or family obligations. A driver cuts you off in traffic. Instead of assuming they're being deliberately rude, consider that they might be distracted by a personal emergency. A service worker seems unfriendly. Rather than taking it personally, consider that they might be dealing with personal challenges you know nothing about. However, Halon's razor isn't about naivete or dismissing genuine malice when it exists. Think of it as a first-line diagnostic tool, not an absolute rule. It's about making incompetence or ignorance our first hypothesis, rather than our last resort. The principle also contains a deeper truth about human nature. Most people aren't plotting and scheming their way through life. They're just trying their best to navigate their own challenges, often making mistakes along the way. This realization can be incredibly liberating, as it frees us from the exhausting task of constantly analyzing others' hidden motives. Perhaps most profoundly, Halon's razor invites us to extend to others the same grace we hope they'll extend to us when we make mistakes. After all, Haven't we all been on the other side, having our momentary lapses or oversights misinterpreted as intentional slights? As you rest with this wisdom, consider how many of your current frustrations might look different through the lens of Halon's razor. How might your relationships change if you replace suspicion with curiosity and assumed confusion before malice? With degrees, in doing so, you might find yourself living in a world that seems less hostile and more human. A world where mistakes are just mistakes, and where understanding comes before judgment. This simple philosophical tool, properly applied, doesn't just change how we see others. It transforms how we experience the world itself, making it a less threatening and more comprehensible place to exist. Occam's razor principle. Imagine you're walking through a garden and hear hoofbeats. Which is more likely, that it's a horse or that it's a zebra wearing a saddle while being ridden by a unicorn? This whimsical example introduces us to one of philosophy's most powerful thinking tools, Occam's razor. The principle states, entities should not be multiplied beyond necessity, or in simpler terms, the simplest explanation is usually the best one. Named after William of Occam, a 14th century Franciscan friar, this philosophical razor isn't about finding the easiest answer. It's about finding the answer that requires the fewest assumptions. Think of it as a mental pruning tool, cutting away unnecessary complications to reveal the most likely truth. Let's explore this through a story. A detective arrives at a crime scene where a jewelry store has been robbed. She finds two possible explanations. First, a professional thief with years of experience used specialized tools to crack the safe. Second, a team of international spies coordinated with aliens using advanced technology to teleport the jewels away while simultaneously erasing security footage and hypnotizing the guards. Even though the second explanation might be more exciting, Occam's razor guides us toward the first, simpler explanation. But why does simplicity often lead to truth? Imagine building a house of cards. The taller and more complex you make it, the more likely it is to collapse. Each additional card, or in our case, each additional assumption, increases the chances of the whole structure falling apart. Similarly, complex explanations require more things to be true simultaneously, making them statistically less likely to be correct. This principle revolutionized scientific thinking. Before Copernicus, astronomers created incredibly complex models to explain planetary motion, adding circle upon circle to match their observations. Then Copernicus suggested a simpler explanation. What if the planets, including Earth, just orbited the Sun? This elegant solution, though controversial at the time, proved far more accurate than its complicated predecessors. However, Occam's razor comes with an important caveat. It's a guiding principle, not an absolute rule. Sometimes the truth is complex. Think of quantum physics, where the reality of subatomic particles often seems stranger than fiction. The key is that even in these cases, we start with checking if it's charged before assuming it's been hacked by cybercriminals. Or, when a friend doesn't show up for coffee, consider that they might have forgotten before concluding they've been kidnapped by a secret organization. This principle also teaches us something profound about human nature. We often prefer complex, dramatic explanations because they seem more meaningful or interesting. There's something almost disappointing about simple truths. Yet finding beauty in simplicity, in the elegant, straightforward explanation, can be deeply satisfying. Consider how this applies to everyday situations. A strange light in the sky? Before assuming aliens, consider aircraft or satellites. A mysterious illness? Check common causes before fearing rare diseases. Unexpected success at work? Your hard work might be the simpler explanation than luck or conspiracy. Occam's razor doesn't just help us find truth. It helps us find peace of mind. By favoring simpler explanations, we can avoid the anxiety that comes from imagining elaborate worst-case scenarios. It's a reminder that sometimes the truth isn't hiding in complexity, but standing in plain sight, waiting for us to notice its elegant simplicity. As you drift towards sleep, consider how this principle might illuminate your own life. How many of your worries rest on complicated assumptions? how many problems might have simpler solutions than you've imagined. In embracing Occam's razor, we might find not just clearer thinking, but a clearer path through life itself. Remember, in a world that often celebrates complexity, there's profound wisdom in seeking simplicity. The truth, more often than not, doesn't need elaborate embellishments. It simply needs to be recognized. The lottery of birth theory. Imagine for a moment that before you were born, you were handed a cosmic lottery ticket. This ticket would determine not just who you would be, but where you would be born, to whom, in what era, in what circumstances, and with what opportunities. Someday. This is the lottery of birth theory, a profound philosophical concept that challenges our notions of merit, justice, and human destiny. Consider this. You didn't choose to be born in your country, to your parents, with your genetic predispositions, or in this particular century. You didn't select your native language, your early education, or the cultural values that shape your formative years. Everything that forms the foundation of who you are began with a roll of cosmic dice. Think of it like arriving at a theater where a play is already in progress. You didn't choose the script, the setting, or your role. You simply found yourself on stage, expected to perform. Some are born onto a stage with bright lights and a supportive audience, while others enter a dimly lit corner with far fewer resources at their disposal. This theory carries profound implications for how we view success, failure, and human potential. Warren Buffett himself acknowledged this when he spoke of winning the ovarian lottery, being born male, white, and in America during the 20th century, with access to opportunities that most of human history never knew. He recognized that his success, while requiring skill and effort, was built upon a foundation he neither earned nor chose. Let's explore this through a thought experiment. Imagine a child born in a remote village without electricity, clean water, or access to education. Now imagine another child born into a wealthy family in a developed nation, with access to the best schools, healthcare, and opportunities. Both children might possess equal innate potential, but their life trajectories will likely differ dramatically due to circumstances entirely beyond their control. The theory challenges our traditional narratives about merit and achievement. While personal effort, dedication, and choices matter tremendously, they operate within the boundaries set by our birth lottery. It's like being dealt cards in a poker game. While skill affects how you play them, the initial deal significantly influences your chances of winning. This understanding has revolutionary implications for how we view social justice and human society. If our station in life is largely determined by factors beyond our control, what does this mean for our obligations to one another? How should this influence our policies, our judgments, and our treatment of those less fortunate? Consider education. A child born in Silicon Valley to tech executive parents will have vastly different educational opportunities than one born in a war-torn region or impoverished community. Neither child earned their starting position. They simply won or lost a lottery they never entered. The theory also invites us to examine privilege not as something to feel guilty about, but as something to acknowledge and potentially use to benefit others. If you've won aspects of the birth lottery, perhaps your privilege carries a responsibility to help create opportunities for those who didn't. This perspective can foster both humility and empathy. When we truly internalize that we didn't choose our starting circumstances, it becomes harder to judge others for theirs. The theory suggests that, "There but for the grace of fortune go I," isn't just a saying. It's a fundamental truth about human existence. Yet this theory isn't meant to promote fatalism or dismiss personal responsibility. Rather, it's about understanding the complex interplay between circumstance and choice. We may not choose our starting point, but we can choose what to do with what we're given. As you contemplate this theory, consider how it might change your view of others. The homeless person on the street, the refugee seeking asylum, the child born into wealth and privilege. Each is playing with cards they were dealt in a game they didn't choose to enter. This understanding can lead to a more compassionate and equitable worldview, where we recognize that our achievements and failures exist within a broader context of fortune and circumstance. It reminds us that while we can't control where we start in life, we can control how we treat others who started differently. The Capgras delusion theory. Imagine coming home one evening and looking at your loved one's face, their smile, their eyes, their familiar features. But something feels terrifyingly wrong. While they look identical to your loved one, you're gripped by an unshakable feeling that they're actually an imposter, a perfect duplicate who has somehow replaced the real person you know. This isn't the plot of a science fiction movie. This is the reality for people experiencing the Capgras delusion, one of the most fascinating phenomena in the realm of human consciousness and perception. First described by Joseph Capgras, a French psychiatrist in 1923, this rare psychological condition reveals profound insights about how our minds construct reality and recognize the people we love. He first observed it in a woman who was convinced that multiple identical-looking imposters had replaced her husband. What makes this delusion so intriguing is that it challenges our basic understanding of how we recognize faces and form emotional connections. To understand the Capgras delusion, let's explore how our brain typically recognizes faces. Imagine your brain as a sophisticated security system in an art museum. There are two parallel pathways, one for visual recognition, like security cameras identifying a visitor's face, and another for emotional response, like sensors detecting if this visitor belongs here. In normal face recognition, these two systems work in perfect harmony. But in Capgras delusion, something remarkable happens. The visual system works perfectly. Patients can see and recognize every detail of their loved one's face. However, the emotional pathway becomes disconnected. It's as if the security camera recognizes the visitor, but the emotional sensor doesn't trigger the usual warm, familiar feeling of recognition. This disconnect creates a profound paradox in the mind. Think about looking at a photograph of someone you love. You recognize them instantly, but you don't feel the same emotional warmth as when you see them in person. The Capgras delusion is like being stuck in this state permanently, recognizing but not feeling the emotional connection, leading the mind to create an explanation. This must be an imposter. The implications of this condition reach far beyond clinical interest. It raises profound questions about consciousness, identity, and the nature of human connections. How much of our recognition of loved ones depends on pure visual input, and how much relies on the invisible threads of emotional connection? What does it mean to truly know someone? Some philosophers and neuroscientists suggest that the Capgras delusion offers a window into the complex machinery of consciousness. It shows us that our experience of reality isn't a simple unified process, but rather a delicate dance between different systems in our brain, each contributing to our sense of what's real and familiar. Consider for a moment. Every time you recognize a loved one, your brain performs an incredible feat of integration. It matches visual patterns with emotional memories, creating that seamless feeling of familiarity we take for granted. When this integration fails, as in Capgras delusion, we glimpse how fragile yet remarkable our perception of reality truly is. The Capgras delusion teaches us something profound about human consciousness. Our sense of reality, our recognition of loved ones, and our feeling of connection to others isn't a simple, single process, but a beautiful symphony of different mental systems working in harmony. When this harmony is disrupted, it reveals just how complex and mysterious our experience of consciousness truly is. As you drift closer to sleep, consider how many intricate processes are working together right now in your mind, creating your unique experience of reality, your recognition of the world around you, and your connection to those you love. The Uncanny Valley Theory. Here's a soothing yet insightful script for the Uncanny Valley Theory. Have you ever felt an inexplicable sense of unease when looking at a highly realistic robot or a CGI human character that's almost but not quite perfect? That subtle feeling of discomfort, that creeping sensation that something isn't quite right, you're experiencing what robotics professor Masahiro Mori called the Uncanny Valley, a fascinating phenomenon that tells us as much about human psychology as it does about technology. Imagine walking through a toy store. You see a simple cartoon-like stuffed bear. It's clearly artificial, yet it brings a smile to your face. Next to it is a wooden doll. Again, clearly not human, but charming in its simplicity. But then you encounter something different. A hyper-realistic humanoid doll with almost perfect skin texture, nearly natural eye movements, and an almost human smile. Suddenly, that warm feeling disappears, replaced by a subtle but distinct feeling of unease. You've just descended into the uncanny valley. The theory suggests that as artificial creations become more human-like, our emotional response to them becomes increasingly positive, but only up to a point. When these creations become too close to human, yet still noticeably artificial, our comfort suddenly plunges into what we call the valley, a deep drop in emotional response marked by feelings of unease or even revulsion. Think of it like climbing two mountains with a valley between them. The first mountain represents our increasing comfort with artificial things as they become more human-like, from simple robots to cartoons to more sophisticated animations. But just before reaching perfect human likeness, we tumble into the valley. Only by crossing this valley, achieving either complete human likeness or deliberately staying less realistic, can we reach the second peak of comfort and acceptance. But why does this valley exist? Some scientists believe it's deeply rooted in our evolutionary history, a protective mechanism that helped our ancestors avoid sick or dead members of their species. Others suggest it's connected to our fundamental sense of human identity and our innate ability to detect when something isn't quite right. Consider how a symphony orchestra works. When all instruments play perfectly in tune, the music is beautiful. If one instrument is slightly out of tune, our ears immediately detect this discordance, even if we can't explain exactly what's wrong. The uncanny valley works similarly. Our brains are exquisitely tuned to detect these subtle, out-of-tune elements in human appearance and behavior. The implications of the uncanny valley reach far beyond robotics and animation. It raises profound questions about human nature itself. What makes us human? How do we recognize humanity in others? Where do we draw the line between artificial and authentic? In our modern world, as technology increasingly tries to replicate human characteristics, the uncanny valley becomes more relevant than ever. From virtual influencers to AI-powered chatbots, we're constantly navigating this delicate balance between artificial and human connection. Perhaps most fascinating is how the uncanny valley reflects our own self-image, like a mirror showing us what we're not. These almost human creations help us understand what we truly are. Each feeling of discomfort in the valley is really a reminder of the countless subtle elements that make us uniquely human. The microscopic movements, the imperfect perfections, the authentic irregularities that no artificial creation has yet perfectly captured. As you rest and drift closer to sleep, consider how your own mind navigates this valley every day, instantaneously processing countless signals to recognize what is authentically human. In our increasingly digital world, perhaps the uncanny valley isn't just a theory about robots and animations. It's a window into our own humanity, helping us understand what makes us uniquely, imperfectly, beautifully human. The uncanny valley reminds us that in our quest to create perfect replicas of human life, we've discovered something profound about the nature of humanity itself. Sometimes it's our very imperfections that make us perfect. The philosophical concept of Yugen. Imagine standing at the edge of a vast ocean at twilight, watching the sun slowly sink below the horizon as darkness gently falls. You catch a glimpse of wild geese disappearing into a clouded moon. There's a feeling that washes over you, something profound, yet impossible to fully capture in words. This mysterious, deep awareness of the universe's beauty and mystery is what Japanese aesthetics calls Yugen, perhaps one of the most elegant and elusive concepts in all of philosophical thought. Yugen literally translates to mysterious profundity, but like many profound concepts, its true meaning lies beyond simple translation. It's the feeling you get when you realize that the universe is far more mysterious and beautiful than we could ever fully comprehend. Think of Yugen as reading a book where the most important story lies between the lines. It's not in what you see, but in what you sense exists just beyond your perception. Imagine walking through an ancient forest. You see the sunlight filtering through the leaves, creating dancing shadows on the ground. Yugen isn't in the leaves or the light themselves. It's in the subtle suggestion that there's something more, something deeper, something just beyond our grasp. To understand Yugen better, consider these moments. The way your heart feels when you look up at the stars and truly comprehend their distance. The sensation of watching autumn leaves fall and suddenly understanding the cyclical nature of existence. The feeling of hearing a wind chime in the distance and wondering about all the stories the wind could tell. In traditional Japanese arts, Yugen manifests in different ways. In poetry, it's the power of suggestion rather than explicit statement. In painting, it's the empty space that speaks as loudly as the brushstrokes. In theater, it's the pregnant pause between actions that holds the deepest meaning. But Yugen isn't just an artistic concept. It's a way of seeing the world. Modern physics tells us that the universe is stranger and more mysterious than we could have imagined. Dark matter, quantum entanglement, the vast expanses of space. These scientific discoveries echo what the ancient Japanese understood through Yugen, that the most profound truths often lie just beyond our direct perception. Consider how Yugen might apply to human consciousness itself. Just as we can never directly see the wind, but only its effects on leaves and water, we can never directly observe consciousness, but only its manifestations in thought and behavior. This parallel suggests that Yugen is just a poetic idea, but a fundamental truth about how we experience reality. Think of Yugen as similar to watching a boat disappear over the horizon. The mystery isn't in the boat's disappearance itself, but in the suggestion of countless unseen journeys continuing beyond our view. It's the understanding that while we can't see what lies beyond, we can feel the vastness of what might be there. In our modern world of instant information and constant connectivity, Yugen reminds us of the value of mystery. It suggests that true wisdom lies not in knowing everything, but in being aware of how much we don't know. It's found in those moments when we stop trying to understand everything and simply allow ourselves to be moved by the profound mystery of existence. As you drift towards sleep, consider the Yugen in this very moment. The mysterious process of consciousness transitioning to dreams. The countless thoughts and memories floating just below the surface of awareness. The profound complexity of your own existence. Like a moon, partially hidden by clouds, the most beautiful aspects of life are often those we can sense, but never fully grasp. In embracing Yugen, we learn that some things are more beautiful precisely because they cannot be fully understood, like the space between stars, the depth of human emotion, or the peaceful transition from wakefulness to dreams. The philosophical concept of Ma. Take a deep breath, and now slowly exhale. In that pause between your breath, that perfect moment of stillness, you've just experienced what Japanese philosophy calls Ma. It's not just empty space or silence. It's the powerful interval where meaning itself resides. Ma teaches us that emptiness isn't nothing, it's everything. Imagine a conversation with someone you love. What makes it meaningful isn't just the words spoken, but the thoughtful pauses between them. These aren't empty gaps, they're pregnant with meaning, anticipation, and understanding. This is Ma in its most human form. In Japanese, Ma is written with a character that shows the sun peeking through an open gate, like sunlight streaming through a doorway. Ma is the space that allows brilliance to enter our lives. It's not the absence of something, but rather the presence of possibility. Think of music for a moment. A beautiful melody isn't just about the notes being played, it's about the precise spacing between those notes. Without these intervals, we wouldn't have music at all. We'd have noise. In the same way, Ma suggests that life's meaning often resides not in the events themselves, but in the spaces between them. In traditional Japanese architecture, Ma manifests in the thoughtful arrangement of rooms and gardens. Consider the tokonoma, an empty alcove in a traditional Japanese home. To Western eyes, it might appear to be wasted space, but in the philosophy of Ma, this emptiness serves as a vessel for possibility, a space where imagination and meaning can dwell. Ma appears everywhere in daily life, though we rarely notice it. The moment before sunrise when the world holds its breath. The space between reaching for someone's hand and touching it. The silence after a profound question. The emptiness of a canvas before the first brushstroke. In our modern world, we often try to fill every moment, every space, every silence. We check our phones during elevator rides, play background music during quiet moments, scroll through social media in waiting rooms. But Ma reminds us that these empty spaces aren't meant to be filled. They're meant to be experienced. Think of Ma like the white space in a beautiful piece of calligraphy. The empty space isn't a blank void. It's an active element that gives the black ink its power and meaning. Without this space, the characters would blur together, losing their clarity and impact. Ma teaches us about the art of timing in life. Just as a skilled comedian knows the perfect pause before a punchline, Ma suggests that all of life has its own natural rhythm of fullness and emptiness. It reminds us that sometimes doing nothing is doing something very important indeed. In meditation practices, Ma manifests as the space between thoughts, that moment of pure awareness before the next thought arises. It's in these spaces that we often find our deepest insights and most profound peace. As you lie here drifting towards sleep, notice the Ma in your own experience, the quiet space between your thoughts, the peaceful interval between your breaths, the gentle transition between wakefulness and dreams. Ma reminds us that emptiness is never truly empty. Like a vessel that's useful because of its hollow center, or a window that serves its purpose through its openness, the apparent nothingness in our lives might actually be everything we need. It teaches us that sometimes the most meaningful moments are the ones where nothing seems to be happening at all. As you rest in this moment, allow yourself to appreciate the Ma in your own life, the beautiful empty spaces that give shape and meaning to all the fullness around them. For it's in these precious intervals that we often find our deepest peace, our clearest insights, and our most profound connections to the essence of being. The philosophical concept of Wabi-Sabi. Look at your hands for a moment. Notice the tiny imperfections, the slight asymmetry of your fingers, the unique patterns in your skin, perhaps some scars that tell stories of your past. In these supposed flaws, you're witnessing what Japanese philosophy calls Wabi-Sabi, the profound beauty of imperfection, impermanence, and incompleteness. It's a concept that challenges our modern obsession with perfection and invites us to see beauty in the most unexpected places. Imagine an ancient ceramic bowl, cracked and repaired with gold. This is kintsugi, the physical embodiment of wabi-sabi. Instead of hiding the cracks, they're highlighted with precious metal, suggesting that it's the imperfections that make something truly valuable. The bowl isn't beautiful despite its cracks. It's beautiful because of them. Wabi originally meant the loneliness of living in nature, remote from society, while Sabi referred to the autumn of life, the lean and withered beauty of age. Together, they've evolved to describe a profound appreciation for the imperfect, rustic, and melancholy aspects of existence. Think of wabi-sabi like an old wooden bench in a garden. Over years, the wood has weathered, its surface textured by rain and sun. Moss grows in its crevices, and the grain has become more pronounced. To a mindset focused on perfection, this bench needs replacement. But through the lens of wabi-sabi, it has only grown more beautiful with time, each mark and weathering telling a story of its journey through seasons. Wabi-sabi appears in countless forms. The asymmetrical leaves of a naturally grown plant, the gentle wear on well-loved books, the patina on old copper, the wrinkles around smiling eyes, the handmade pottery with visible fingerprints, the worn stones of ancient temples. In our age of filters, Photoshop, and carefully curated social media, Wabi-Sabi offers a revolutionary perspective. It suggests that our attempt to achieve perfection is misguided, not because perfection is too lofty a goal, but because imperfection is actually more beautiful and meaningful. Consider how Wabi-Sabi might apply to human relationships. Like an old marriage that has weathered storms and grown stronger through challenges. Or a friendship that's more meaningful because of the difficulties it has overcome. These aren't perfect relationships, they're real ones. And that makes them far more precious. In traditional Japanese aesthetics, Wabi-Sabi manifests in rough ceramics, uneven glazes, simple tea houses, and modest gardens. But its wisdom extends far beyond aesthetics. It's a worldview that accepts the fundamental truth of existence. Nothing lasts, nothing is complete, and nothing is perfect. Think of Wabi-Sabi as nature's truth revealed in objects and experiences. A perfect sphere exists only in mathematics. In nature, everything is slightly askew, weathered, and in constant transition. This isn't a flaw in the universe, it's the very essence of reality. Wabi-Sabi reminds us that we are not meant to be perfect, complete, or permanent. Like the changing seasons, the weathered stones, and the aging trees, our beauty lies in our transience and our flaws. Each wrinkle, scar, and imperfection is not a flaw to be corrected, but a story to be honored. As you drift towards sleep, remember that like this moment, imperfect, incomplete, and impermanent, you too are perfectly imperfect, exactly as you should be. In embracing Wabi-Sabi, we find a deeper peace. One that comes not from achieving perfection, but from accepting and celebrating the beauty of life exactly as it is. Mono no aware. Picture yourself sitting beneath a cherry tree in full bloom. As you watch, a soft breeze stirs, and a single petal breaks free, dancing slowly through the air before settling on the ground. In that moment, you feel something. A sweet sadness, a gentle ache, a bittersweet awareness that this perfect moment is already passing. This is mono no aware, a poignant awareness of the transience of all things. The term literally translates to the pathos of things, but its meaning runs far deeper. It's the emotional awareness that everything in life, every smile, every sunset, every cherished moment, is fleeting. Yet, rather than being a source of sadness, this awareness makes these moments even more precious. Think of looking through old photographs. There's a certain tenderness in seeing faces younger, places changed, moments long past. That feeling isn't quite nostalgia, nor is it purely sadness. It's mono no aware, the gentle ache of being human and aware of time's passing. Imagine holding a handful of sand. The tighter you try to grasp it, the more quickly it slips through your fingers. Mono no. Aware teaches us not to clutch desperately at moments, but to appreciate them precisely because they're slipping away. It's the understanding that impermanence doesn't diminish beauty, it creates it. We experience mono no aware in countless ways. The last day of summer vacation, a child's outgrown clothes. The changing of seasons, the end of a perfect evening with friends. In Japanese culture, the cherry blossom holds special significance precisely because of its ephemeral nature. The flowers bloom for just a few days each year, their brief appearance and inevitable falling away serving as a perfect metaphor for life itself. Their beauty isn't diminished by their briefness, it's enhanced by it. Mono no aware differs from simple sadness or melancholy. It's not about mourning what's lost, but about finding beauty in the very fact that nothing lasts. It suggests that impermanence isn't a flaw in the universe, it's what gives life its depth and meaning. In our modern world of digital permanence and instant replay, mono no aware reminds us that real life happens only once. Each sunset is unique. each laugh unrepeatable, each moment a singular gift that will never come again exactly the same way. This concept teaches us about love too. When we truly love someone, we are acutely aware that our time together is finite. This awareness doesn't make love sad. It makes it more precious, more worthy of our full attention and gratitude. No aware invites us to live more fully by accepting life's transient nature. It suggests that our awareness of impermanence can lead not to despair, but to a deeper appreciation of beauty and a more profound capacity for love and gratitude. As you drift towards sleep, remember that this very moment, with its unique combination of thoughts, feelings, and sensations, will never come again exactly this way. And that's what makes it perfect. Like a cherry blossom carried on the wind, each moment is more beautiful because it's fleeting. The glass child syndrome. Imagine a family photograph where one child seems to fade into the background, like light passing through glass. They are present, yet somehow transparent, bearing the weight of being simultaneously visible and unseen. This is the essence of what we call the glass child syndrome, a profound psychological phenomenon that affects siblings of children with special needs or chronic conditions. The term glass child was coined by Alicia Arenas, who grew up as the sibling of a child with special needs. She describes glass children as those who watch life happen through a transparent wall, seeing everything, feeling everything, but often going unnoticed in the intensity of their family situation. Think of a garden where one plant requires constant attention, special care, and extra resources to survive. While the gardener's dedication is necessary and beautiful, the other plants must learn to grow in whatever light filters through. They become resilient, but they also become transparent, like glass. Glass children often develop remarkable characteristics: extraordinary empathy at a young age, advanced emotional intelligence, strong self-reliance. Imagine holding two glasses, one visibly cracked and requiring careful handling, the other seemingly perfect and sturdy. The world naturally focuses on protecting the cracked glass, while the sturdy one is expected to need no special care. But glass, no matter how strong it appears, still needs gentle handling and attention. These children often develop what psychologists call precocious maturity, growing up too fast, too soon. Like a greenhouse plant forced to bloom early, they develop survival mechanisms that are both impressive and poignant. To the glass children listening, your transparency isn't invisibility. Your strength isn't invulnerability. Your maturity isn't a barrier to needing support. Like a prism that appears clear, yet contains all the colors of the rainbow, you hold depths that deserve to be seen and understood. If you're a glass child, know that your experiences have shaped you but don't define you. Like light passing through a prism, your challenges can transform into unique strengths and profound wisdom. The glass child syndrome reminds us that sometimes the most resilient among us are the ones who appear the strongest. It teaches us to look more carefully at those who seem to need us least, to listen more attentively to those who complain the least, and to remember that strength, like glass, can be both remarkable and fragile. As you drift towards sleep, remember that being transparent doesn't make you invisible. Like the most beautiful glass art, your experiences have created patterns of light and shadow that make you uniquely precious and worthy of attention. The philosophical parking lot. Theory. Have you ever noticed how, when you're desperately searching for a parking spot, it seems impossible to find one? But the moment you give up and decide to leave, several perfect spots appear? This seemingly mundane experience reveals a profound truth about human psychology and the nature of desire. Welcome to the philosophical parking lot theory. This theory isn't just about parking spaces. It's a metaphor for life's most persistent paradox, the way our desperate desire for something often becomes the very thing that prevents us from obtaining it. When we grip too tightly, what we seek seems to slip through our fingers. Imagine yourself circling a busy parking lot. Each loop increases your anxiety, your frustration growing with every filled space. Your mind becomes fixated on finding the perfect spot. In this state of desperate seeking, You might miss perfectly good spaces because they don't match your ideal. Or you might be too tense to smoothly maneuver into an available spot when you do find one. First, the law of inverse effort. The harder you try to find something, the more it eludes you. This isn't just about parking spots. Think about trying to fall asleep, finding love, or achieving happiness. Often, the more desperately we pursue these things, the further they seem to drift away. Second, the paradox of attachment. When we become too attached to a specific outcome, we become blind to other possibilities. Like a driver fixated on finding a spot near the entrance, we might miss multiple suitable spaces slightly further away. Third, the liberation of surrender. The moment we truly let go of our desperate search, our perception shifts. We become more relaxed, more aware, and ironically more likely to find what we're looking for. Think of it like trying to see a star in the night sky. If you look directly at it, it might seem to disappear. But when you relax your gaze and look slightly to the side, suddenly the star becomes visible. This is called averted vision in astronomy, but it applies to many aspects of life. This theory connects deeply with ancient wisdom traditions. Buddhists speak of non-attachment, Taoists of Wu Wei, effortless action, and Stoics of accepting what we cannot control. The parking lot becomes a modern meditation on these timeless truths. The theory suggests a profound truth. Sometimes our greatest obstacle isn't external circumstances, but our own desperate desire for control. Like a tightly clenched fist that cannot receive anything new, a mind fixated on one specific outcome becomes blind to other possibilities. As you rest here, notice how this principle might apply to sleep itself. The more we try to force ourselves to sleep, the more elusive it becomes. But when we relax and let go of the need to sleep, we create the very conditions that allow sleep to arrive naturally. The philosophical parking lot. Theory reminds us that sometimes the best way forward is to ease our grip on what we seek. It suggests that life's gifts often come not through force of will, but through a delicate balance of intention and surrender. As you drift towards sleep, remember that, like finding the perfect parking spot, some of life's most sought-after experiences come not when we chase them desperately, but when we create the space for them to appear naturally. The Codex Seraphinianus theory. Imagine you're holding a beautifully bound, thick, mysterious book in your hands. Its cover is adorned with intricate symbols, and as you open it, you're greeted by a series of surreal images. A strange plant morphing into a chair, fish swimming through rainbow-colored clouds, and people merging with their surroundings in bizarre ways. Every page is filled with an unfamiliar language, one no one has ever been able to decode. Welcome to the world of the Codex Seraphinianus, a book that has puzzled readers and scholars since its creation in the late 1970s. The Codex. Seraphinianus, created by Italian artist and architect Luigi Serafini, is perhaps one of the most enigmatic works of our time. The book resembles an encyclopedia and is filled with detailed illustrations of an imaginary world, each accompanied by texts written in a bizarre, indecipherable script. Although it's been nearly 50 years since its creation, no one has cracked its language or unlocked its meaning, leading to countless theories about its purpose and message. The Codex's contents evoke a powerful sense of curiosity and wonder, not unlike the feeling we get from childhood fairy tales or fantasy novels. Just as Alice fell down the rabbit hole into Wonderland, readers of the Codex are transported into a surreal, alien landscape where the usual rules of reality don't apply. There are familiar elements, plants, animals, cities, but they're all distorted, twisted into forms that challenge our perceptions of the real world. In many ways, the Codex Seraphinianus embodies the human fascination with the unknown. We often seek to understand, categorize, and make sense of things. But what happens when something resists explanation? The Codex invites us into a world where we must accept mystery and ambiguity, embracing the strange and the unknowable. Some scholars suggest that this is precisely its point. It's a book that defies understanding, serving as a metaphor for the limits of human knowledge. One of the most compelling aspects of the Codex is its elaborate script. Serafini created a flowing, looping text that looks like a language but isn't recognizable to any known linguistic system. Over the years, many have tried to decode it, analyzing letter frequencies and structures, but no one has succeeded in translating a single word. The text appears to be consistent, as if governed by grammatical rules, and this has led some to believe it could indeed be a language, or perhaps a pseudo-language meant to mirror the way we interpret symbols. Some have suggested that the Codex's language serves as a mirror of our own experience with communication. Imagine, for example, an alien stumbling upon an English dictionary for the first time. They might recognize patterns and letters, but be completely unable to understand the meanings. The Codex's language could be a reminder of how foreign, even cryptic, communication can be, particularly in cultures we don't fully understand. It taps into our experience of outsiderness, of being presented with symbols we can't decipher, yet sense are significant. The illustrations in the Codex seem designed to provoke thought rather than to inform. Unlike most encyclopedias which offer straightforward information, the Codex presents images that are surreal, whimsical, and at times unsettling. Serafini's drawings blend elements from natural history, architecture, and the human body, turning them into dreamlike scenes that can be interpreted in countless ways. There are hints of familiarity. The pages might show plants, animals, or people, but they are never exactly what we expect. This artistic choice may be Serafini's way of demonstrating the flexibility and subjectivity of interpretation. Just as we can all look at the same piece of abstract art and walk away with different impressions, the Codex offers each reader a unique experience. One person may see a metaphor for human transformation. Another might see commentary on technology and nature. In this way, the Codex Seraphinianus almost invites readers to become creators themselves, constructing their own meanings and narratives as they navigate its pages. Another compelling theory is that the Codex is a critique of our obsession with categorization and order. Think of an encyclopedia. It's a reference book intended to provide clear, factual information. But the Codex takes this format and fills it with ambiguity and fantasy, as if to remind us of the limitations inherent in human knowledge. In creating a text that resists categorization, Serafini may be hinting that the world isn't always as understandable as we'd like it to be. Life, like the Codex, contains mysteries that can't always be decoded or reduced to neat definitions. This sense of ambiguity resonates with the philosophy of absurdism, where the search for meaning meets the inherent meaninglessness of the universe. Much like Albert Camus's myth of Sisyphus, in which Sisyphus endlessly pushes a boulder up a hill only for it to roll back down, readers of the Codex are engaged in a quest to understand something that defies understanding. It's a journey without a destination, an intellectual exercise that invites us to explore without expecting concrete answers. Ultimately, the Codex Seraphinianus isn't just a strange book. It's an experience that challenges us to think differently. In a world where we crave explanations and clarity, the Codex offers something rare, an invitation to embrace the unknown. It reminds us that not all mysteries are meant to be solved, and that sometimes the beauty of art and life lies in the unanswered questions. By letting go of our need to decipher its language and images, we can begin to appreciate the Codex as it is, a surreal, immersive art piece that mirrors the wonder and mystery of existence itself. Like a dream, it slips away when we try to grasp it, leaving us with only the feeling that we've glimpsed something beyond words.